flowers and trees, like everything that belongs together, we're meant to be. Oh, who'd believe?
All right, hi everybody, David Fogel back with you, CEO of the Symphonina Foundation, back with another Symphonina Foundation podcast, and I'm joined today by composers David Tobin and Emmy winner Jeff Meegan. David and Jeff, how are you today?
Doing great,
thank you. Thank you very much.
Pleasure to be here.
It is indeed.
Yeah, we're listening to some of your great music on the way in, and it doesn't sound like the typical symphony music that we normally listen to, because it's not. It's big band, large jazz ensemble music. This is from Keep On Movin, your album that's submitted for Best Large Jazz Ensemble. And you also incorporate many symphonic elements into it. I was looking at the credits. You've got violins, violas, cellos, clarinet, trumpet, trombone. Well, you'd expect trumpet and trombone in a big band ensemble, wouldn't you? But I wanted to get you guys on particularly because I think there's a lot of importance about how to write for big band and how to write for orchestra and how the two can inform each other. And you have so many writing credits between the two of you. Your album is just excellent. I think it's over 1,000 things that you've worked on together, which is just unfathomable, really, to begin with. But you've worked on The Count of Monte Cristo from BBC Radio, films like Supersize Me 2 and Daughter of the Bride, written for daytime dramas, and you've worked with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra and other orchestras. So I just wanted to give you a chance, first of all, to talk about your album, what the genesis of it was. I have to say, there's one review that was written before you guys get started. And the review that caught me with, and it's really so true. It's as if Fred Astaire waltzed into Abbey Road and found the espresso machine and decided to record an album of big band music in one caffeinated afternoon, which is totally true, except for one ballad that's on there, I think. So yeah, Fred had to sit down for a little bit and calm down.
A little rest there, yeah, right.
Yeah, but tell us about your genesis for the album and maybe how you guys started working together and all that, and then we'll go from there.
Cool. The genesis for this album is, well, we had written a bunch of big band albums previously, a lot of which was Christmas music. We, with our publisher Audio Network, kind of said, hey, wouldn't it be fun to do another big band album that's not Christmas music? And so that was, boom, that was the, we're going to do one and it's not Christmas music, so let's start writing.
But it's also going to be mostly up-tempo, uplifting, at a time when there's a lot of things in the world that maybe aren't so uplifting. That's where we're going to
absolutely head with it. Yes.
When you guys get that idea, how long does it take before you get the idea, before you get actually started writing, before it gets produced? You're in the studio. What's the process like for you?
I think from the first conversation about it to it being released was over 2 years, just over 2 years. And I think, once we had the first conversation, it was probably a few months before we even started putting songs together, just trying to get inspired and figure out exactly what direction to go. And
I think the first thing for me, it doesn't matter how much big band music we've written, I have to put my ears in that space, whether I've listened to it 1,000 times since I've been a child or not. So the first thing I do, we just sat down and did some listening, and that takes a while, but I need to feel like I'm wholly owned by that space and not dipping into it, because we do other stuff too. And once we're there, our process, it can change from different things, but essentially very often one of us will send the other one a very small nugget of an idea, and it might just be sung into a phone, and then we'll play past the parcel with it, and we will slowly develop that. And sometimes we'll pass it and the other person will say, that's great, I don't like it. And we'll move on. And that's taken a while for us to be able to have that relationship where you don't worry that you're going to hurt somebody's feelings in the way that you pass that information. We've known each other a long time, but essentially, once we get to the point of producing, because we have to produce demos of these to allow a publisher to understand the concept of what we're going to do, because it's, apart from anything else, it's expensive to record. And frankly, it's not our money. So we need to make sure that they're comfortable, and it's a team thing. So primarily at that stage, we've got to pass them an idea that they clearly understand. They're not going to get a surprise on a session. They know what it is we're driving at, which means producing demos at a high enough level that they can get that idea. So the first thing we have to do is produce a song, just piano, vocal, bass, drums, just produce a song, make sure lyrically it's where we want it to be. But we do that. And if we think, we could be in a jazz club without a band, this just works as a song, then we'll move on to the next stage.
So we'll write the tune, piano, vocal, and then if we like it enough, we'll move it on to sort of doing a big band arrangement of it, a very mocked up big band thing.
Mhm.
And that's usually enough to play for someone else, for them to go, yeah, this is really great. I like this. Let's use it, you know. So yeah, so we did that for this album. We did, and we overwrote a little bit. There's 8 tunes on the album. I think we wrote 10 or 12. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah, something like that, 11 or 12, yeah.
So yeah, so it was a, you know, it was a good journey. I mean, David and I, as he touched on, we've been working together for 15 years now. And actually the first album we worked on together was a big band album for a company called Heavy Hitters Music out in LA.
Okay. All right.
And so it was, you know, how we began working together.
Yeah, the very first thing we did 1,200 works ago was big band. That is true.
Yeah, yeah.
But actually, I know that we're talking about this album now, and I probably should have said this to you before we were on air, but another album that may be worth pointing our listeners to at some stage, we did a couple of albums, one called The Golden Age of Hollywood and one called The Golden Age of Christmas. And the reason they pop into my head is that they are symphonic jazz.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So this is a complete melding of styles, like you've got a Busby Berklee, you know, walking down the stairs with a huge thing. But this is symphonic elements, but playing jazz.
Mm-hmm.
So just a side note, if you will, that's to point that out, that's something we've covered as well. And that is where the Venn diagram of jazz and orchestral.
Absolutely, yeah.
Together.
I am going to make a note of that. And when the first round is over, I will listen to that. Before the first round's over, I doubt I'm gonna listen to anything except submissions, but we'll see how that goes. Maybe I'll take a break and listen.
Yeah, lie down in a dark.
Clean your ears. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you brought up something, and I want to come back to the album that you released, but I want to come back to something that you said about overwriting.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens to those tunes that don't make it on the album?
Well, usually they end up somewhere. You know, we have them sitting in a folder on a computer somewhere right now, but we don't have too many things that don't eventually get used.
Yeah.
So we'll save it for another project. Maybe it'll just be a straight jazz project rather than a big band project. Yeah, or you know.
But sometimes actually we'll take a nugget of an idea. So we might have written an entire song that we love, and it didn't work as a song for that project, but instrumentally repackaged and reworked, it works for another thing. So part of being a commercial composer rather than a concert composer in that way is, having stuff that just sits around and doesn't earn us money is not ideal.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll find a way. I think we have very little that we haven't
really
used
for
something somewhere somehow. And we've even taken things that we've used and found ways to arrange them and use them more than once where possible. For example, we've done Christmas songs where we've recorded an intro like it's a Christmas intro and it's entirely that's the way it is. And we record an outro that's entirely Christmas. But then we take what's underneath the vocal, which, you know, as we call the underscore there, kept that, recorded a separate intro that isn't Christmas, a separate outro that isn't Christmas, a new vocal with new lyrics, and then released it as not
Interesting.
A Christmas song.
Okay. Yeah. How did you each get into composition and music in the first place?
Both of my parents were musicians,
Okay.
and music was always, you know, a big part of my household growing up. And then, so I took piano lessons and drum lessons and stuff, and I did musical theater when I was a kid.
Okay.
And somewhere in my teens, I just started writing music. I just sat down at the piano one day and was hitting chords, and I started singing a melody and literally just wrote a song. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And so that was, I think I was 14 maybe. Yeah, so that was the beginning of my journey. I got a 4-track recorder and started recording my own stuff, like pop music. I still do some of that for, you mentioned that, right? Or I do some stuff for Young and the Restless. Mm-hmm. That's who I won my Emmy Award with for a song on there. So I didn't go to college. I'm not, trained like that. Mm-hmm. It's just been all self-taught and through listening and experimenting and working with people like David and other collaborators that, my craft has been honed, if you will.
Yeah. David, how about you?
Mine is, there are some bits of that where there's a Venn diagram where they cross, but mostly not actually. Mm-hmm. My mother was, back in the day, was a professional opera singer.
Okay.
And my parents were passionate about music education. So I started on the recorder age just under 4.
Yep.
And that actually, I know people view that as an instrument for young children maybe, But fast forward, if you will.
We can eat
I
while we do it. Yeah, go ahead.
I did spend a brief stint as a concert recorder player. I did my degree on the recorder, so that
Wow.
did carry on. And in fact, I can also point listeners to where in our catalog there are things we've done where we've used that. But I started with that. I had a classical education musically. I was an oboist, played a
Hmm.
lot of other wind instruments and the piano. I was a singer at the time. Now Jeff's the singer, but I was a singer. Studied orchestration. I went and did my first degree in London as both a recorder and oboist and an orchestrator. And then I said to them, I should say, as a songwriter, a bit like Jeff, I sat down and I was mucking about, maybe a little younger than you, maybe 11 or 12, had the same kind of 4-track recorder that Jeff had, and thought, this is amazing. I can do this, and it's so immediate. Writing things on paper and then thinking, how do I even make a noise out of this was amazing, but unsatisfying when you can't hear it except in your head and you want to get it across to somebody else.
Yeah.
But the ability to record it and
Make
have somebody
music all
hear it.
yourself. Yeah.
So I went to college, did my degree at Guildhall, and then said to them, I really want to write music for film and TV. And they said, we don't do that. And this was in the mid to late 90s, before there were many courses in that. There were none in the UK.
Yeah.
So I transferred to Berklee in Boston,
Hmm.
and I did my film scoring degree and composition major at Berklee College of Music in Boston, which was where I really learned much more about sync and about writing in that world rather than concert writing. So that was the genesis of that for me.
Yeah. Is there, I mean, a lot of people who would be listening to the podcast would be interested in doing sync writing, I think. And probably that environment has changed over the years, maybe the last 2 decades. I'm not quite sure myself, but I do know other people who I think would tell me that. What do you think the landscape is for someone who wants to get into sync writing now? Is there something that they should be focusing on? Maybe the top 2 or 3 things?
Wow, that's a really good question. I don't know that there is something they should be focusing on, except for going out and meeting people and getting involved with organizations where you can meet people who are doing that sort of work. In fact, we're here in Nashville for an SEL, the Society of Composers and Lyricists event. And there's other organizations like that where you can, meet like-minded people and go to seminars and that sort of thing. And that's a good place to start, at least.
I've got a couple of ideas of things that may be useful. The first is most people these days, and this would have been the case 20 years ago, but it's become even more now. The first place they start is with instruments that aren't real. They'll take something, I'm assuming that all the listeners will know what MIDI is, but they'll take a virtual instrument. So they'll play it on the keyboard, but it sounds like a violin or a French horn or whatever it is.
Right.
And they'll work with that. And that's great. And I'm not denigrating that because we have to do it all the time. But they all have their own sound, and the sounds become familiar and the same as each other. And the one thing I was speaking on one of these panels yesterday, and somebody asked a similar question. And my advice is, people say, well, we can't afford an orchestra. I can't do that. And I say, okay, don't get an orchestra. Just work with one player. Find a single person. These days, we're speaking over the internet. Jeff and I do this every day, and we're thousands of miles apart. Hire somebody with just a single instrument. You would be amazed, David. You put one violin or one viola over a sample, and all of a sudden it's a whole different game. It's live. Because of I use the word imperfection in a loving way, because it's not supposed to sound exactly the same every time it's played. It's supposed to have human life in it.
Nuance.
And that's how you differentiate from the AI-ness of anything that I really don't want to spend the whole podcast talking about. But
no, we don't.
But that's the truth, is that working with human beings, I think, will be the key wherever humanly possible. And if you can't afford much, just afford one.
Yeah. So that just a little amen to that. One of my very first orchestral things was a mock-up that I did for a soundtrack to the American solar eclipse from 2017. And it was a nice mock-up, but I had many people in the music industry tell me, many meaning like 5, tell me I should get live players to record. So I just had Peter Sprague on the podcast a few days ago. Peter's a friend of mine up the road in Encinitas, legendary jazz guitarist, but also had done some work with the San Diego Symphony many years ago. And he arranged to have violin, viola, and cello and flute recorded live for it. And yeah, absolutely. Just those three instruments with a couple of overdubs, multiple tracks,
Change the whole
can
thing.
make it great. It played in 42 planetariums around the world for a while.
Wow.
He asked me if it made me a rich man. I said, no, not really. But it was my first musical award, so it made me rich in other ways. But
well, congratulations to that.
it really does make a difference. Then you get into the other issues about the engineering production, which are very important to learn too, I think, as a composer and an orchestrator. Like what can the real instrument play? What is demanded of the level of the player that you're asking to record for you? Are you writing something that the mock-up can do that a real player might struggle with unless they're elite? And what's your odds of getting an elite player anyway? All those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would say is this is an argument for music education, because the difference between somebody taking a five-fingered chord and playing strings via that and not really understanding how a violin works and how you cross strings and what techniques are possible.
Yep.
And some of those techniques are very difficult to replicate on samples or impossible. And they become out of favor because samples don't do them, so people don't use them. But if you've had the education to say, I know how a violin works, and by the way, to all the listeners, if you said that, well, I don't know how a violin works, go talk to a violin player. You can sit in a room and say, show me some stuff. What would it be worth me knowing? Take you half an hour or an hour of your time.
Yeah. Collaborate with one.
Yes, or collaborate with. That's a good idea.
That's a good one too.
That's the thing. And then you'd be amazed also how much better your samples sound once you write for them like a player would play it. Because that's the biggest thing I hear when I hear a mock-up. You hear something that can't be played the way it's written, and then you know, that's not real. Because they couldn't do that.
Right. I think the other approach, which I took for a little while, is to learn the instrument yourself. So I took violin. Yeah, I took violin for 4 months, and then much to my family's happiness, I gave it up. But it was enough to understand a little bit more about what you're saying, like, string crossover, or what are the open strings, how do they sound different than when they're not open, all those kind of things that do help. But then again, if you collaborate with somebody who really is proficient on the instrument, they're going to open up possibilities for you that you wouldn't otherwise have thought about. If they can just demonstrate them for you and say, here you go. And then you go, okay, I can write that, but I can't write this.
Right.
Well, I think so. One of the dangers, of course, is that you open up a sample patch and you gravitate towards one that's quick and easy and you kind of like, but it sounds the same every single time. There's no change. Talking about strings, there's no change in the pressure on the bow. There's no speed differentiation of the vibrato or whether it's used. There's no, or you could go on and on and on, but it doesn't have any of that, which of course isn't real. And that's the thing. And this is assuming that what you're going for is realism. Yeah. That should be stated.
And just since we're talking about collaboration and you talked about engineering and producing and that sort of thing, for those people who might be listening who are classical musicians or composers, but don't know anything about the engineering or production side of it, you can collaborate with those people as well and find someone who's interested in the kind of music you do, even if they're not, just has the skill that you need, and see if you can work with them,
Yeah,
that is a good point.
Yeah.
That actually collaborations take a lot of forms. And we should say, although we collaborate together, we regularly, and on the album we're talking about, did collaborate with other people. There's a lot of people on that album.
There are a lot of people on the album. And I was going to ask you too, in the production of the album, when you guys have written the songs, you've got the orchestration you want, you've selected what's going on in the album, it's time for recording. I'm presuming you're there at the recordings.
Absolutely.
And I presume you're producing, right? So so
alongside a gentleman called Ali Johnson, who co-produced it with us. And Andrew Sonics also co-produced the album. And so there are a lot of opinions and a lot of voices.
Yeah. How do you handle that when there are diverse opinions?
Well, I mean, fortunately, we've all been working together for quite some time. So we that helps to have a relationship. But, opinions are good. I think that's what it's all about. People bring their own experiences and their own ears to everything. And just because I want something doesn't mean that it's right. So, and I think we share that.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is, even then, we don't necessarily agree. So what sometimes happens on a recording session where time can be precious, we'll try something two ways. We'll try your way, we'll try my way. Okay. And then you usually, when you hear it, go, oh, yeah, you're right. That's better.
Yeah.
And then, but we'll test it out, because sometimes you don't know. That even with a deep understanding of it, you're not quite certain.
Yeah.
So you hear it.
Yeah. So it's best if you budget that into your calculations and your budget, literally. So that,
Yeah.
so you know that this is time we've allocated to do just that kind of thing. You don't feel like you're stealing it from something else.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because these things are so expensive and time is precious. We do so much planning on the front end that by the time we get to the studio with the musicians in the chairs, there's very little discussion to be had, really. That's kind of had beforehand.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly there's performance issues that come up in the studio, but
The scores are extremely specific, much more than for concert work, actually, where you would leave stuff to the interpretation of the conductor, maybe, and the player. But if I want something, because I mean, on the album we're talking about, we actually worked with some specific orchestrators. I'm a jazz orchestrator, but I wouldn't count myself in the world-class level by any stretch of the imagination. So we worked with people that were.
Okay.
And that'd be Callum Au,
oh, yeah, sorry.
Martin Williams, and Charlie Harrison.
Yeah. Okay.
But what we do is, if we want a short note, we will stipulate how short.
I see. Okay.
If we want something to crescendo, or if we want something to use other terms like portamento on a violin, sliding up where you want that feel, like you'll hear on some music. I think on the outro you talked about playing our track Memories in the Sky, and you'll hear portamento all over that. But if we want it, we'll write it. So every time we can avoid a discussion, we'll write it.
Yeah.
Just so that we've got the time when we really need it, when we do do we want it this way or that way? We're not doing it all the time, because there isn't time. Because the whole album was recorded in a day.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, a lot of people, a lot of moving parts. It all turned out excellent. I will be listening to it at least 2 more times today. So
wow.
Wow, thank you.
Right. It's just great. I really appreciate it. What are you working on for next year?
For next year, actually, we did a lot of recording this year. We worked on the violin concerto album.
We did.
And actually, it should be said that we have, through our publisher Audio Network, done a large collection called the Classical Favorites Collection, or Classical Collection, where we take classical favorites and sort of cut them down to 2.5, 3 minute
Symphonina length.
Sounds great.
Length. Yeah. And we reorchestrate and rearrange some things. So we've done 180, almost 200 of those.
200 now, yeah.
So we have, this year coming out will be some violin concertos to add to that. And then we did some classical favorites for 2 pianos.
That was really interesting. So in terms of the process of recording those, a lot of this stuff, just because of the speed we have to work at, we will record to a click track. So there will be a sound in every musician's ear telling them exactly the tempo and the advantage of that. And it may be that includes a writ or slowed down or a speed up. So I'm not saying it's all identical tempo,
right?
But everybody knows where the beats are.
Yep.
Which means that when you've done one take, if you need to do another one, you can kind of put it where that would be and then cut them together.
Right.
We've done a double piano album where we've said we've taken famous orchestral works and arranged them for 2 pianos, and also taken some famous piano works and arranged them for 2 pianos. And we've done 16, 18, how many we did? Yeah. But no click tracks, just performed like concert works, which is scary because you've got the studio for a specific period of time and it has to work.
Yes.
Yeah. So the amount of planning that went into that was insane. Making sure that I went down personally, visited the players, they fingered everything. No, that you need to rework. That doesn't fit slightly under my fingering there. And over and over and over and over again until you know that this is going to work. And even then you kind
there
of,
was still some
holding your breath. How's this going to be?
Yeah.
But real. So that's coming out this year as well. What are we working on next?
What else?
Well, I tell you what we can say. So we've done all this big band stuff. We do this classical stuff, these classical favorites. The next thing we're working on, and we literally, both of us have in our rooms here where we are now, we have laptops, little keyboards so that we can both do some writing here.
Good.
Our publisher said, what if we take those famous classical works and arrange them for big band? So they'll be big band works a la Buddy Rich or Maynard Ferguson, big band.
Can't wait to hear Beethoven's Fifth as a big band. Thank you.
Yeah,
There you go. You got it.
Appreciate that.
And the 1812
Yes.
and those kind of things. So that we will be starting writing in the next 3 days.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
Well,
and we're here in Nashville recording a classic soul album
Of course we are.
tomorrow.
We're recording a soul album tomorrow.
Awesome.
I shouldn't forget that. So we're working on that right now in Sound Emporium Studios in Nashville tomorrow.
Classic soul, saying these are new original compositions that
In that
you know
style.
in that style. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah. David, Jeff, it's been great meeting you. I wish you all the best with your Keep On Moving album. Like I said 4 times already, it's great. Just congratulations to you and everybody else who worked on it. I know, it starts with the writers. Maybe it starts with whoever has the idea, but it starts with the writers and it ends with everybody. And so everybody on that album should be very proud of what they contributed. David, Jeff, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
We have an Instagram. That's Meegan Tobin.
Yeah, with the A-N-D. So Meegan, A-N-D, T-O-B-I-N. For Meegan and Tobin on Instagram. We have a website, www.meegan-tobin.com. You can get us there.
Yeah. We also have a new podcast, don't we?
Yes.
Two
Jeff,
composers, two continents. That is in its fledgling stages, but
and I should just very briefly say, the whole idea of that is that we've realized that the music industry has all of these like onion-like layers. It's not all superstars. And we're trying to just explain what it's like to be a working guy in the music industry when you're not, some A-lister.
yeah.
And so, we've started that. You can find that on Spotify, Two Composers, or anywhere you get your podcasts, or on YouTube on its own channel, Two Composers, Two Continents.
Yeah. And
so get us on any of those platforms.
If there's anything that we can do at the Symphonina Foundation to be of help to you, just let me know. We're going to listen to some more of your great music on the way out here, and good luck with everything.
Thank you so much, David.
Thank you, David.
Hold my hand, let's take a ride through this rich and crazy life, and every constellation soon will tell our very special story through memories in the sky.